Hello and welcome. My name is Alan and we are back with more mythology. So, yeah, today we start into the official story of how the ancient Greeks saw the world as being brought into existence. So, let's go ahead and get into this here. How the world and mankind were created. With the exception of the story of Prometheus's punishment, told by Aeschylus in the 5th century, I have taken the material of this chapter chiefly from Hesiod, who lived at least 300 years earlier. He is the principal authority for the myths about the beginning of everything. Both the crudity of the story of Cronus and the naivete of the story of Pandora are characteristic of him. First, there was chaos, the vast, immeasurable abyss, outrageous as a sea, dark, wasteful, and wild. These words are Milton's, but they express with precision that what the Greeks thought lay back of the very first beginning of things. Long before the gods appeared in the dim past, uncounted ages ago, there was only the formless confusion of chaos brooded over by unbroken darkness. At last, but how no one ever tried to explain, two children were born to this shapeless nothingness. Night was the child of chaos, and so was Erebus, which is the unfathomable depth where death dwells. In the whole universe there was nothing else, all the black, empty, silent, endless. And then a marvel of marvels came to pass, in some mysterious way, from the horror of blank, boundless vacancy. The best of all things came into being. A great playwright, the comic poet Aristophanes, describes it coming in words often quoted. Black-winged night, into the bosom of Erebus dark and deep, laid a wind-born egg, and as the seasons rode, forth sprang love, the longed-for shining with wings of gold. From darkness and from death love was born, and with its birth order and beauty began to banish blind confusion. Love created light with its companion, radiant day. What took place next was the creation of the earth, but this too no one ever tried to explain. It just happened with the coming of love and light. It seemed natural that the earth also should appear. The poet Hesiod, the first Greek who tried to explain how things began, wrote, "Earth, the beautiful, rose up, broad-bosomed, she that is the steadfast base of all things, and fair earth first bore the starry heaven equal to herself, to cover her on all sides, and to be a home forever for the blessed gods. In all this thought about the past, no distinction had as yet been made between places and persons. Earth was the solid ground, yet vaguely a personality too. Heaven was the blue vault on high, but it acted in some ways as a human being would. To the people who told these stories, all the universe was alive with the same kind of life they knew in themselves. They were individual persons, so they personified everything which had the obvious marks of life, everything which moved and changed, earth in winter and summer, the sky with its shifting stars, the restless sea, and so on. It was only a dim personification, something vague and immense, which, with its motion, brought about change and therefore was alive. But when they told of the coming of love and light, the early storytellers were setting the scene for the appearance of mankind, and they began to personify more precisely. They gave natural forces distinct shapes. They thought of them as the precursors of men, and they defined them more clearly as individuals than they had heaven and earth. They showed them acting in every way as human beings did, walking, for instance, and eating, as earth and heaven obviously did not. These two were set apart. If they were alive, it was in a way peculiar to them alone. The first creatures who had appeared, who had the appearance of life, were the children of Mother Earth and Father Heaven, Gaia and Uranus. They were monsters, just as we believe that the earth was once inhabited by strange, gigantic creatures. So did the Greeks. They did not, however, think of them as huge lizards and mammoths, but as somewhat like men and yet unhuman. They had the shattering, overwhelming strength of earthquake and hurricane and volcano. In the tales about them, they did not seem really alive, but rather to belong to a world where as yet there was no life. Only tremendous movements of irresistible forces lifting up the mountains and scooping out the seas. The Greeks apparently had some such feeling because in their stories, though they represent these creatures as living beings, they make them unlike any form of life known to man. 3 of them, monstrous, huge, and strong, had each 100 hands and 50 heads. To 3 others was given the name of Cyclops, the wheel-eyed, because each had only one enormous eye as round and as big as a wheel in the middle of their forehead. The Cyclopes, too, were gigantic, towering up like mighty mountain crags, and devastating in their power. Last came the Titans. There were a number of these, and they were in no way inferior to the others in size and strength. But they were not purely destructive. Several of them were even beneficent. One, indeed, after men had been created, saved them from destruction. It was natural to think of these fearful creations as children of Mother Earth, brought forth from her dark depths when the world was young, but it is extremely odd that they were also the children of heaven. However, that was what the Greeks said, and they made heaven out to be a very poor father. He hated the things with 100 hands and 50 heads, even though they were his sons, and as each was born, be imprisoned, and as each was born, he imprisoned it in a secret place within the earth. The Cyclopes were the Titans he left at large. The earth, enraged at the maltreatment of her other children, appealed to them to help her. Only one was bold enough, the Titan Cronus. He lay in wait for his father and wounded him terribly. The giants, the fourth race of monsters, sprang up from his blood. From the same blood, too, the Aranyes, the Furies were born. Their office was to pursue and punish sinners. They were called those who walk in the darkness, and they were terrible of aspect, for writhing snakes, with writhing snakes for hair and eyes that wept tears of blood. The other monsters were finally driven from the earth, but not the Aranyes. As long as there was sin in the world, they could not be banished. From that time on, for untold ages, Cronus, he whom, as we have seen, the Romans called Saturn, was Lord of the universe, with his sister queen Rhea, Ops in Latin. Finally, one of their sons, the future ruler of heaven and earth, whose name in Greek is Zeus and in Latin Jupiter, rebelled against him. He had good cause to do so, for Cronus had learned that one of his children was destined someday to dethrone him, and he thought to go against fate by swallowing them as soon as they were born. But when Rhea bore Zeus, her sixth child, she succeeded in having him secretly carried off to Crete, while she gave her husband a great stone wrapped in swaddling cloths, which he supposed was the baby, and swallowed down accordingly. Later, when Zeus was grown, he forced his father, with the help of his grandmother, the earth, to disgorge it, along with the 5 earlier children, and it was set up for Delphi, where eons later a great traveler, Pausanias by name, reports that he saw it about 180 AD, a stone of no great size, which the priest of Delphi anoint every day with oil. There allowed a terrible war between Cronus, helped by his brother Titans, against Zeus with his 5 brothers and sisters, a war that almost wrecked the universe. A dreadful sound troubled the boundless sea. The whole earth uttered a great cry. Wide heaven, shaken, groaned. From its foundation, far Olympus reeled beneath the onrush of the deathless gods, and trembling seized upon black Tartarus. The Titans were conquered partly because Zeus released from the prison the 100-handed monsters who fought for him with their irresistible weapons, thunder, lightning, and earthquake, and also because one of the sons of the Titan Iapetus, whose name was Prometheus, and who was very wise, took sides with Zeus. Zeus punished his conquered enemies terribly. They were bound in bitter chains beneath the wide earth, as far below the earth as over earth is heaven, for even so far down lies Tartarus. 9 days and nights would a bronze anvil fall, and on the 10th day reach earth from heaven, and then again falling 9 days and nights would come to Tartarus, the brazen fenced. Prometheus's brother Atlas suffered a still worse fate. He was condemned to bear on his back forever the cruel strength of the crushing world and the vault of the sky. Upon his shoulders the great pillar that holds apart the earth and heaven, a load not easy to be borne. Bearing this burden, he stands forever before the place that is wrapped in clouds and darkness, where night and day draw near and greet one another. The house within never holds both night and day, but always one departing visits the earth, and the other in the house awaits the hour for her journeying hence, one with far-seeing light for those on earth, and the other holding in her hands sleep, the brother of death. Even after the Titans were conquered and crushed, Zeus was not completely victorious. Earth gave birth to her last and most frightful offspring, a creature more terrible than any that had gone before. His name was Typhon, a flaming monster with 100 heads, who rose up against all the gods. Death whistled from his fearful jaws. His eyes flashed glaring fire. But Zeus had now got the thunder and lightning under his own control. They had become his weapons, used by no one else. He struck Typhon down with the bolt that never sleeps, thunder with breath of flame. Into his very heart the fire burned. His strength was turned to ashes, and now he lies a useless thing by Etna, whence sometimes there burst rivers red hot, consuming with fierce jaws the level fields of Sicily, lovely with fruits, and that is Typhon's anger boiling up his fire-breathing darts. Still later, one more attempt was made to unseat Zeus. The giants rebelled, but this time the gods were very strong, and they were helped too by mighty Hercules, a son of Zeus. The giants were defeated and hurled down to Tartarus. The victory of the radiant powers of heaven over the brutal forces of earth was complete. From then on, Zeus and his brothers and sisters ruled, undisputed lords of all. Let's see. As yet, there was no human beings, but the world, now cleared of the monsters, was ready for mankind. It was a place where people could live in some comfort and security without having to fear the sudden appearance of a titan or a giant. The earth was believed to be a round disk divided into two equal parts by sea, as the Greeks called it, which we know as the Mediterranean, and by what we call the Black Sea. The Greeks called this first the Axine, which means the unfriendly sea, and then perhaps, as people became familiar with it, the Euxine, the friendly sea. It is sometimes suggested that they gave it this pleasant name to make it feel pleasantly disposed toward them. Around the earth flowed the great river Ocean, never troubled by wind or storm. On the further bank of Ocean were mysterious people, whom few on earth ever found their way to. The Cimmerians lived there. But whether east, west, north, or south, no one knew. It was a land cloud-wrapped and misty, where the light of day was never seen, upon which the shining sun never looked with his splendor, not when he climbed through the starry sky at dawn, nor when at evening he turned toward the earth from the sky. Endless night was spread over its melancholy people. Except in this one country, all those who lived across ocean were exceedingly fortunate. In the remotest north, so far away it was at the back of the north wind, was a blissful land where the Hyperboreans lived. Only a few strangers, great heroes, had ever visited it. Not by ship, nor yet on foot might one find the road to the marvelous meeting place of the Hyperboreans, but the Muses lived not far from them. Such were their ways. For everywhere the dance of the maidens swayed, and the clear call of the lyre sounded, and the ringing notes of flutes. With golden laurel they bound their hair, and they feasted merrily. In that holy race, sickness and deathly old age had no part. Far to the south was the country of Ethiopians, of whom we know only that the gods held them in such favor they would sit at joyful banquets with them in their halls. On Ocean's bank, too, was the abode of the blessed dead. In that land there was no snowfall, nor much winter, nor any storm or rain. But from ocean the west wind sang soft and thrillingly to refresh the souls of men. Here those that kept themselves pure from all wrong came when they left the earth. Their boon in life forever freed from toil. No more to trouble earth or the sea waters, with their strong hands laboring for the food that does not satisfy, but with the honored of the gods they lived, a life where there was no tears. Around those blessed isles soft sea winds breathe. The flowers of gold are blazing on trees, upon the waters too. By now all was ready for the appearance of mankind. Even the places the good and bad should go to after death had been arranged. It was time for men to be created. There is more than one account of how that came to pass. Some say it was delegated by the gods to Prometheus, the Titan, who had sided with Zeus in the war with the Titans, and to his brother Epimetheus. Prometheus, whose name means forethought, was very wise, wiser even than the gods. But Epimetheus, which means afterthought, was a scatterbrained person who invariably followed his first impulse and then changed his mind. So he did in this case. Before making men, he gave all the best gifts to the animals: strength and swiftness and courage and shrewd cunning, fur and feathers and wings and shells and the like, until no good was left for men, no protective covering, and no quality to make them a match for the beast. Too late, as always, he was sorry and asked his brother's help. Prometheus then took over the task of creation and thought out a way to make mankind superior. He fashioned them in a nobler shape than the animals, upright like the gods, and then he went to heaven, to the sun, where he lit a torch and brought down fire, a protection to men far better than anything else, whether fur or feathers or strength or swiftness. And now, though feeble and short-lived, mankind has flaming fire, and therefrom learns many crafts. According to another story, the gods themselves created men. They made first a golden race. These, although mortal, lived like gods without sorrow of heart. Far from the toil and pain, the cornland of itself bore fruit abundantly. They were rich who in flocks and beloved of the gods. Then, when the grave covered them, they became pure spirits, beneficent, the guardians of mankind. In this account of the children of in this account of the creation of the gods, seemed bent on experimenting with the various metals, and oddly enough, proceeding downward from the excellent to the good, to the worse, and so on. When they had tried gold, they went to silver. This second race of silver was very inferior to the first. They had so little intelligence, and they could not keep from injuring each other. They too passed away, but unlike the gold race, their spirits did not live on after them. The next race was of brass. They were terrible men, immensely strong, and such lovers of war and violence that they were completely destroyed by their own hands. This, however, was all to the good, for they were followed by a splendid race of godlike heroes, who fought glorious wars and went on great adventures, which men have talked and sang of through all the ages since. They departed finally to the Isles of the Blessed, where they lived in perfect bliss forever. The fifth race is that which is now upon the earth, the Iron race. They live in evil times, and their nature too has much evil, so that they never have rest from toil and sorrow. But as the generations pass, they grow worse. Sons are always inferior to their fathers. A time will come when they have grown so wicked that they will worship power. Might will be right to them, and reverence for the good will cease to be. At last, when no man is angry anymore at wrongdoing or feels shame in the presence of the miserable, Zeus will destroy them too. And yet, even then, something might be done, if only the common people would arise and put down rulers that oppress them. So yeah, we'll end that piece there. We see how the Greeks have interpreted the creation of the known universe. The Titans and the different monsters. The 100-handers, also known as the Hecatonchires. The Cyclops. And like we already mentioned, the other Titans. But yeah. But we'll go ahead and end that piece there. As always, educate thyself. Think, read, study, learn. Someone tells you something you have trouble believing, ask them to cite their sources. I'll see you all in the next video. Until then, later.